We just don't like to admit it, or we like to convert a loss from what it is into a positive. Now, the neat thing is, losing, the loss, for example, isn't negative. So why turn something to positive if it's negative? It's just part of life. So it's the first stage of life, is just construction. Then what you're invited to is to deconstruct. And deconstruct is not necessarily needing to go to the dark night of the soul. It's just to be like, well, what does this mean? This is decentering. And for a human to get stronger, a human doesn't walk on 2 feet at the same time. A human walks on 1 foot and then takes a step, and that's you're decentering, you're off balance. You build strength and you're off balance. Letting myself shift from taking action, from answer, to taking action from just observing what's here, no need to fix, manage, and or control, and then moving that into the third stage, which is reconstruction, which is allowing it all to belong.
Well, welcome everyone to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alan DeMonso. As we look back on our life, we can use 2020 vision to see where our wins and our losses were. The meaning we put on these events determines how we perceive our current reality and our future. So if our lives are not shaping up to the way we anticipated it would, then is it possible that we need to mature the achiever within us so we can pull important life lessons forward, reshaping them into powerful and meaningful drive? I think so, and so does my guest today, as we're going to get into how we can live fully alive by harnessing the wins and losses in our life. Now, before I get into all that, I want to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform so you can stay updated on the latest content while helping me grow the Awakened Man message. And for that, I want to say I'm truly grateful. So with everything being said, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
You know, it's like customary. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just going to say, Ellen, thanks for having me on. Your words are so gracious.
Right on, buddy. I just want to start off by asking a couple of questions to get us to set the stage for today's conversation. Can you think of a time back on the wins and the losses that you had in your life? I know I can. And how have these shaped your life into who you are today? Well, these answers reside in the story that we tell each other, both to ourselves and to other folks. And the best part is that we can change that narrative once we recognize the gifts that they hold. And today, my guest is about to share his story about a life that worked until it didn't, and what he did to bring purpose and meaning back into his life. So allow me to introduce my guest, James Heppner. James likes to think of himself as an artist of experience. His passion is to create transformational experiences for himself and others as a way to explore what it means to truly live fully alive. And James is a results coach and the founder of the Weekly Wins and Losses podcast and a weekly global community call. And he helps people in their journey to embracing all of life, both wins and losses equally. Welcome to the show, James. How are things?
Thanks, and sorry for interrupting earlier. I thought you're pausing. Hey, things are well. Things are. Hey, let's just say it this way. I just modeled forward a loss.
Isn't
I
that
just
perfect?
took one for the team. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's perfect. But this is what it's all about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know what, James, and a lot of I do in the work that I do with men is we always talk about each of us being on our own hero's journey, or I call it a hero's quest. So tell us about your journey and how that paved the road for who you are today and the work that you're doing.
Great question. And I'll try to give you the Coles notes, the short version, the pivotal moments version. And so, let's just say, and how would I put this other than, I think honestly, just to begin, Alan, you're in that worthy, and we're all doing worthy work, but I'm 46. I'm kind of right in that grouping of men that are active listeners within your audience. And I just want to say, for all of you men, whether you're that age or younger or older, or if you are of different gender, and I'll just welcome here. And I just want to say that it seems to me that each one of us has a specific moment in life that's the catalyst for the next stage of our life. And it's like halftime show. Seems like roughly 40, we enter halftime show. And so we're in the locker room and we're getting chatted to. And perhaps we're chatting to ourselves. The coach is talking us up, whatever's going down. We come out of the tunnel and we're like, it's going to have to get laid out now. I got 2 quarters to play. Half of my life is likely over. And so that's kind of the idea. What I mean to say, and I don't mean to laugh at it all and not be jovial. And let's be honest. What I do is I deal with some pretty heavy stuff in a light way. And I do it on purpose because I once chose to take where I perceive, not even where I actually lost in life. The truth is, we lose in life as much as we gain and win in life. We do. We just don't like to admit it, or we like to convert a loss from what it is into a positive. Now, the neat thing is, losing, the loss, for example, isn't negative. So why turn something to positive if it isn't negative? It's just part of life. 50%, like you said, of our life is actually directly in front of us if we would just participate with more of it. And that's the loss of our life, the losing of our life. And so what I was just about to unpack, we all run into something. It can be someone, it can be a scenario, but we run into, and I just call it threshold moments when we just realize that apparently everything has come together and either we're overwhelmed, we're exhausted, it's too much, and your listeners will know. Ellen, you probably know, right? We hit these moments, and how do we label them? If we label it for, it came to take me down, we got some issue. The only thing is, when we look at what actually it is, and so I went through a journey. My son had high functioning autism, was born with it. I have an older son, 2 years older than Harrison, who has high functioning autism. So Rowan is 17, Harrison's 15 now. But when Harrison was diagnosed with high functioning autism, I remember going, what does this mean? And so I had just kicked the can down the road on a few traumas in life, or a few losses. I just try to convert them. And you know what happens when you kick things down the line? You're lucky if you get to have those cans all pile up that you get to deal with it. Yeah. When I say lucky, because the last thing you want is to kick them down, the whole pile of cans down the line for the next generation to deal with and eat. So you're lucky if you get to deal with them, but likely that pile shows up at a time that's not of your choosing. Yeah. It's not perfect. It isn't lovely. My son was young. What do I do? Man, you got this thing in life. What is it? Is it financial? What doesn't matter what it is. With your spouse, your marriage is falling apart. Something is going down, and you finally hit the line where you realize, if I'm trying to fix, manage, or control this thing, that's not working anymore. I literally have no more answers. As a matter of fact, the first half of my life has been built on typically me looking for answers. I'm constructing my life. So it's the first stage of life, is just construction. Then what you're invited to is to deconstruct. And deconstruct is not necessarily needing to go to the dark night of the soul. It's just to be like, well, what does this mean? This is decentering. And for a human to get stronger, a human doesn't walk on 2 feet at the same time. A human walks on 1 foot and then takes a step. And that's, you're decentering, you're off balance. You build strength and you're off balance. And so what I did is I labeled the off balance time of my life as being like, oh my goodness, this is the most horrible thing. And I think I lost my ability to function as a human. And I checked out of life for 2.5 years, almost lost my marriage. I literally slept, Ellen, for 18.5 hours a day through melatonin, through Advil. I basically tried to sedate myself. I didn't want to kill myself, but I didn't want to live. So what do? You sleep it away. Try to think my way out of a problem. Not being okay with deconstructing, letting fall down, letting fall apart, letting myself shift from taking action from answer to taking action from just observing what's here, no need to fix, manage, and or control, and then moving that into the third stage, which is reconstruction, which is allowing it all to belong. And as soon as, and I'll stop here, let me just say it this way. Most people, what happens, the deconstruct seems so painful that they go back and they just keep constructing. When in essence, when you do that, it's like you're running back into the tunnel. Halftime show is over. You're on the field. And can you imagine if you're a player in the NFL and you run back in the tunnel and say, no, I don't want to come play. What does that look like? The game's going to go on. Life's going to go on. You're going to miss. I ran back in the tunnel. I missed out 2.5 years of my life. You don't have to. We don't have to. If we don't make the fateful decision that what is directly in front of us isn't exactly, and I mean exactly, the gift, and if we're not comfortable, we need to make safe. Ask yourself the question, men. Why is it that we get so threatened from not knowing? Where is it that we could start building our strengths from asking questions instead of all the answers? Who has all the answers? Well, in the beginning of life, let's not blame that part. The first half of life, you buy a house, probably, buy some investments, you get a job, you get a career, you get married, you get kids. Guess what? You think to yourself, listen, how do you build all this? I got teenage boys now. They look at it all through like, I got answers. The Google knows this, and I know this, and I know this. They're building their ego container. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
But when you don't transition, when that challenge comes in your life, and it's typically a big thing. So my platform is weekly wins and losses, but we all have a big thing. So the point I'm trying to make here, we all have a big thing, a sizable thing, whether it's one thing or it's an accumulation of things, but it makes us go, holy smokes. And it's like this. I like to look at it like this. If there is a God in the world, I believe there is. Whatever that looks like for you, I have no idea. But I like to look at it like this. It's like God shaking the tree one last time and saying, if there's something in there, let's let that fruit come down now. So here's the thing. Us men, we know last thing we want to do is waste time. And so what often happens if we think about, we don't want to waste time, we get very productive, we get very busy with the hands.
Yeah.
So I'm so empathetic towards men who take this journey of construction and then deconstruct, and then in that uncomfort, keep going through the journey and push through till they get to the inclusion part of reconstructing with all of it. Because here's the thing, you know what that typically requires? That your hands get a little less busy. You're participating, but you're kind of going, instead of like, oh, like this and like this and like this, your hands go up and you go, I don't know.
Yes.
And you start building your strength from the unknown instead of always the known. And I read somewhere years ago in a spiritual book, something to the extent of, you build the greatest of all things when you build on that which you have no reference for. And no reference for is a bit like, try this. Man, if you're driving your car, please don't do this. But if you're at home, wherever you are, close your eyes. And I want you to think about what you're able to see in the darkness that you can't see with your eyes open. You can imagine certain things that you cannot when your eyes are open. Why? Because when your eyes are open, you have a frame of reference for what things are. And the imagination kind of shuts down to some degree, not fully, but it kind of does, because you got edges, you got shapes, you got harsh corners, you got these things. When your eyes are closed, when the darkness, when you don't know what is, think about this. Think about the gift. Think about, instead of just, and then God created light and it was good. Before any of that happened, there was darkness and everything was perhaps built on the darkness. If the world was created like that, I don't know. I am a believer in that there's a force of nature that created the earth, and whether it was a big bang or, God created it in 6 days or 8, 12 days, I could care less. What I'm saying is something happened. So there's that season. So the pivotal part, the pivotal moment in my life came when I said, listen, this tree being shaken, no matter how I fight or scream and say, I don't want it. It said, listen, we care less. It's like life does. Life says, I care less. I love you more. Right? Think about a waterfall coming down a mountain.
Yeah.
Think about a tree falling. The water doesn't, when there's a rock that stands in its way, it doesn't sit there and bitch and complain. It doesn't check out. It just pools and does what it wants. Also, it runs around the rock, and it doesn't see the rock as bad. It just says, oh, rock, you're here. I meet you here. And it harmonizes. So that transition from building your life on answers, which is the construct stage of your life, to being like hands open, what do I do now? To begin to get your strength from the unknown, my friend, to the exact degree that you can handle uncertainty and be comfortable there, is to the exact degree you're going to enjoy life. Because here's the thing, how much, man, ask yourself, how much of life do you control? You control your own life, your own thoughts to some degree, but how much of life do you control? Very little.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a powerful, powerful way to start off our talk today, James. This is outstanding. And I was, feverishly writing notes here, just some stuff that I picked up there. Like this, you talked about having a specific catalyst in life. And I think we all have that. And I think the challenge for a lot of us men is that we're just so numb to life that we don't even see what's happening before us. And because we're just immersed into everything, like you talked about, right? Married, kids, career, you got lots of stuff going on. And you're in your mid 40s, I'm in my mid 50s. And we're in that stage of where life is things are starting to shift for us. And we're looking back about how can we be more impactful. And I liked your idea of threshold moments as well. And how we can go back and look at those threshold moments. So it kind of made me think of the next question I wanted to ask you. And that is, who would you say were your biggest influences in your life, like both positive and negative? Who are those, or were they, or maybe they're not necessarily people, but maybe they were instances. So what would that be?
So I think my biggest ally was my wife. Yeah. I got a picture on the wall behind where I typically work, not on this wall, but a different. And there's a big picture of a lion. And right next to the lion is a picture of a big lamb. My wife, which in life, by the way, we often associate the lion as soft. Mm. My wife was the lamb in our relationship, and I was the lion. And oftentimes, feminine energy, she just ends up showing up in feminine energy more than I do. Yet I have feminine, us men, we have to reconcile that we have feminine energy in us. And it's not like a girl energy. It's actually a nurturing, creating energy, right? So exactly. She was soft, typically, and I was sometimes overtly firm. Mm-hmm. And together, I never forget, a friend of ours said to me years ago, he said, James, I just need to say this to you. And Meg was my wife, Meg, and I've been together for 27 years. And he said, together, you guys are very impactful. However, he says, when you guys are not together, I like you, but it's just different, he figured. And that kind of chewed on me. I didn't really know what he was talking about. Of course, then I went through my story or my journey when I checked out of life for 2.5 years. And I realized, my worst enemy was myself, my inner talk. How we deal with ourselves is how we deal with life. Oh, I had expectation of myself. I was supposed to do it. I was supposed to know how. Like, why? Right? Like 100%. If I'm a man, then bring it to me, which fair enough. The only thing is, there's got to be a gracious side to yourself. But I was so firm, never let I had my day planned like minute by minute. And there's, again, let those that are in a different stage of life not hear me say that they're in the wrong stage, because we all have to go through building upon constructs. When I say all, typically through answers, because when we grow older, we're trying to create this being, and we're trying to say, what's the answer for this? What's the answer? We're trying to have foundation to stand on. But then when that foundation gets moved, we get spooked. So when I think about my wife and I came through my journey, and I'll never forget, somebody said to me, I should read this passage of spiritual, like there's a writing, and the writing basically said, there's a time for love and a time for hate. But the way I read it a time for love or hate. And I read this over and over and over again until I realized I was reading it wrong. It didn't say this or that. It said this and that. Yeah. And then what it made me contemplate is it actually possible to live a life where you don't have to tap into your willpower reserves? Man, ask yourself, how often when you come home are you just exhausted? Exhausted of what? Your willpower is probably gone. And now you come home and you have to deal with thresholds. You have to deal with these things that are uncomfortable, or certain things. You look at your relationship and you're like, I F that up yesterday. And now look at the price I have to pay here. It's like, oh, it's heavy, And so back to the journey, Lion and the Lamb. I popped it on my story and I realized this is what I told myself. Even though I'd grown during that time, I told myself the problem is, listen to this, the problem, and how isn't this what we do in society? We appoint something as the enemy to make something good. I said, the problem is I'm a lion. That's the bullshit. I got to become a lamb. So guess what? For about a year, I became soft, just soft, not firm and soft at the same time. And I'll tell you something. Yeah, I didn't have so many friction points and like business relationships, but my friend, it was so dead for me. And I remember thinking like, man, but that created the bullshit in my life. So what am I supposed to do? Go back to that? This is horrible.
Yeah.
And then of course, when I read that writing, I realized both and at the same time. You don't need willpower then. If it's both and, then in the moment you will have, and what you will need to deliver will come from you. And it's interesting, that same gentleman a couple of years ago approached me and said, you know what's interesting? I once said this about you. And he told me the story. I'm like, I remember. Yeah, I remember what you said. And he said, but here's the thing, James. It's like when I talk with you, it's like you seem like, it isn't like I need Meg here for you to be influential. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And you know, honestly, it's not like I was trying to influence him. That isn't my idea.
Right.
But when I said, so back to who was I most harsh towards? It was me. Who was I most loving towards? It was Meg. And the interesting is I got drawn to her. And the cool thing is I got drawn to her so that I'd experience what soft love looked like. And it's a very tender, feminine energy. And I experienced it, and I realized the man living primarily there anyway, feels kind of empty. Because we all have an achiever in us, but we have to mature the achiever within us.
Yes.
We want to achieve things. Men are doers. Feminine energy are creators. So we bring home the sack of potatoes kind of thing. No, I'm not saying we're just the providers, but sometimes us men, and when I coach men, I coached a gentleman the other day. He's quite successful, and he brings home a lot of loot, basically, a lot of good stuff. Okay, a lot of good stuff. And so he's just concerned. Apparently his wife isn't working anymore because he brings home so much that she doesn't need to. And I said, and how's it working? He goes, good. But the only thing is, I kind of wonder what she's doing. She's just watching Netflix, or what's she doing? I said, have you ever asked her?
Yes.
He goes, well, no, I just become aware. She's wearing pajamas when I come home. So I'm just thinking that perhaps nothing is happening. And I said, and how's that working? I said, how's your sex life? He goes, not so well. I said, oh, okay. I said, do you ever contemplate that maybe she thinks that you have all purpose and she's just not doing anything and you're projecting it onto her? Well, he had thought about that. He wasn't certain though. And I said, well, here's the thing. Imagine this. Imagine you bring home the paycheck and it's a sack of potatoes and nobody does shit with it. Nobody carves it. Nobody creates it. Nobody makes French fries. What are you going to eat? You're not going to eat. You're going to eat a raw potato?
Right.
The feminine presence creates and sculpts and makes an experience. All of our chaos, whatever she does, you know why she has the chaos? Because us men provide the grounding for her to ground into that chaos, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's all over the place, and so when I think back to the narration, sorry for making these answers so long, but back to the narration of the firm and the soft, becoming firm and soft at the same time, choosing that and doing that work is so beneficial. And sometimes we have to go to the other side to experience what that looks like. And so I challenge all of you men to actually grab your balls for half a second and realize if you're a man, that means why are you so threatened that you have feminine energy in you? Do we want to just project into our women that they're the ones that will attend to, if we create problems, they're the ones that are going to go fix it for us, and we can just go create bullshit every now and again and they have to fix it all? Like, is that what we want? Is that how we make our women, if I can say our women, is that how we make the woman feel useful? All that I happen to know, tell me what you think, I'd like to hear your perspective, but what I happen to know is I think relationships, marriage to me looks a bit like this. I feel like my life has a purpose, not when Meg becomes like me or I become like her, but it is when I don't expect that areas that I could develop, she has to do for me in my life. I'm with her. I've been with her for 27 years. So I can learn a damn thing. So I can become, I can activate, I can say that part. I like, right? What do you think, Ellen?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I love that you're bringing this stuff up and talking about the feminine and the masculine energies, and for us men to understand that just because we're talking about saying that all of us have, and I totally agree with you that everyone, male, female, we all share the same energies, and that's what they are. It doesn't make us more or less of one or the other. What it does, it makes us whole. Because in order for us to really grow as individuals and people, is that we have to embrace that aspect of ourselves. And it's about utilizing it and allowing ourselves. And you've been married 27 years. We're into our 20th year coming up and this year. And the thing is that as we learn to get better at communicating and expressing ourselves, we give each other the freedom to be who we want to be, to live the way we wish to live. And I really liked how you talked about that really you had to fight. The worst thing you had to fight with was your inner thoughts. And that is so powerful as I think back of really the work that both of us are doing with men today is about helping them to understand that it's okay. And maybe they think, one of the things I struggle with is some of the messaging here is helping guys understand that, we have to get out of our head and get more into our heart, and not just into our heart, but really feeling into the things that are happening in our life, whether that's emotions or whatever's going on, instead of suppressing and pushing it off and say, I don't want to deal with that threshold moment, or I don't want to deal with that, or I'll kick that, as you said, kick the can down the road. Because ultimately that rooster's coming home to crow. And we need to have the balls to stand up and face what's sitting in front of us. And it takes these huge moments. You started talking a little bit about influences, and I wanted to just unpack that a little bit more. So is there a specific style of influence that shakes things up, that really gets in and penetrates and pierces our most challenging environments? What have you found?
That's such a fascinating concept. And to be honest, I've unpacked some of it here already.
Yeah.
Here's the idea. Everybody listening, you guys know this. You guys know that there's something that seems to shift the waters for certain people. And we all look upon that and go, what is that? What is that? I'm sure you've asked people, what is it that you bring? Or how does this work? When you see that and you're like, man, it's such a mystery. Think about what we're doing right here with me saying mystery. What is that? Is that known or the unknown? It's kind of the unknown. Have you ever realized if you try to language the unknown, you kind of fumble around, because society seems to understand specifics. It's like, well, it's this, it's empathy. But then they go, yeah, but it's empathy, but it's a little more than that. So here's what I've reconciled. What seems to influence best is two things, but really the groundwork for it is the foundation. I'm going to start with this, and that is, they say that an intellectual mind has the ability to handle and onboard a plethora of differing opinions, views, and beliefs without flinching and without feeling pressure to adopt any one of them. That's what an intellectual mind does. So you can hold many perspectives without feeling like you have to decide which one's good, which one's not good. So if you think about, firstly, we have to do the work when we have a thought or have an emotion in our. So when I was checking out of life, I was labeling all of these, half of them bad, being so harsh. If I were to just let them be, let them be. So that's the first part. The first part is simply to say, listen, it's a perspective. I don't have to adopt it. I don't have to feel, is it right or wrong? I can just literally be with this thought, and I can just enjoy the emotion. Because I want your listeners, if you would like, go to Google and type in at some point in time, if you're taking notes, whatever you're doing, type in the emotional wheel, or just a emotional wheel. And you're going to come up with a bunch of emotions. And ask yourself, on the emotional wheel, which emotions do I want to and do I experience most? Now, think about when you go to a funeral and you lower grandma into the grave, or a friend, or think of it, the death of a loved one, the ashes. What do we all say? We all say like, oh, it's too bad they're gone. Meaning we're here, they're there. Where's there? We're not sure, but they're just not physically here anymore. So what allows us to be physically here and experience life? It's emotions, all emotions. So actually we need to find a way, and this is part of that construct, deconstruct, but we bump into like, hey, I once said an emotion of anger wasn't safe, but now anger is pointing me somewhere, or sadness is pointing. I got to take that arrow and let it take me somewhere and not get stuck in it, but let it go. So the point I'm trying to make here is, very importantly, to make safe things that in the past we didn't feel like we needed to make safe. But remember, if your life isn't working anymore, in my opinion, you have no choice but to jump in the river. If you're going to resist like I did, it's going to be hell.
Yeah.
You're going to need to let in and let go and be. So the first part, again, intellectual mind is plethora perspectives without needing to adopt pressure to adopt any of them. But most importantly, once you've done that, or even when you're doing that, ask yourself, why do I need to decide, is this good or bad? And if you don't need to decide if it's good or bad, then something happens. You don't have to decide if you need to be firm or soft anymore. No more decision needed. You can be, it's called a state of 360. You're in the state of 360, and it's like whatever energy is needed, you are it.
Yes.
And you have wired that in. So firm and soft at the exact same time. I call it fierce love. When the lion and the lamb come together, it's a fierce love. And people go, fierce? That sounds really, you know what? Fierce as in like life will just go. Like you ask, your loved one dies, life will keep going. People keep driving to work. Man, seriously, life loves us too much to stop. And it's kind of this amazing, ferocious, and it is so loving. It is not to be stepped on, but it is humble. It seeks not to be powerful. It seeks actually to be the opposite of have any status control over the situation. You see, men, what we actually want, and this sounds really upside down, and I know you're gonna laugh at me for this probably, but what we actually want is a powerless power. And what I mean to say is this: the world says we want to feel power in a specific way that makes us look big. Ask yourself, when you die, what will your body turn into? Dust, ashes. If you burn down the body, it's ashes. Perhaps we were ashes and dirt and dust before we were formed. So if you think about it, the bookends of your life, the beginning, you're small, you're a particle. At the end, you're about equally small in a particle. So here in the middle, this whole concept of we're just big. Hey, we're just big. It's like, have you ever realized that the human feels pretty safe when the human realizes it's pretty small? Because you know what the human realizes when it's small? That we can participate with anything.
Yes.
And we don't have to be God. We don't have to control it all. We don't have to fix it all. We don't have to know everything. We don't have to bring meaning everywhere. We can literally be like, I don't know what's going on here. And guess what happens when we say, I don't know? It's like dark. You can't see what you can see with your eyes open, but you see radically new things.
Yes.
It's like when you're still, you begin to know. I think Bible talks about be still and know I am God. You can apply that to anything really, but be still. You quiet in the soul instead of being so busy with the hands. But I want to make a very important distinction here. Men often think and come to me and they say, "Oh, okay, here's the thing. So if I'm supposed to sit with it, what happens with my desire for doing, like the masculine, get it on my hands?" I said, "Well, think about it. In the past, you probably went from the head down out through the hands, a little bit of heart, but like to your point, not enough heart. Now it's like head. Now it marinates in the heart, stress tests, goes back to the head, perhaps goes back to the heart a few times, but then it comes and guess what? You still get to achieve. It has to come out of the hands. It has to. But love that pierces is one, my friend, that you can't put a finger on. It is humble. It is kind. It is giving. It is self-serving. It doesn't seek status. It says you want to win. I went to a family gathering years ago, and I got one of my brother-in-laws. I don't know how he is today on this, but Mike, if you're listening, I'd say welcome. But somebody was saying that he was the wealthiest person in our group. I got 4 brother-in-laws and no real brothers, right? Yeah. So that means I have 4 sisters. People were talking about who had the most money. And I was sitting at, yeah, exactly. I see your chuckle, right? So I'm sitting around going, I remember the day when I was like, well, perhaps I should pull up my statement. You never know. Perhaps I have the most, it's like, what the? And I felt that feeling of, oh, I should prove myself. I should like talk about the investments that I have or the residual that I have or the houses that I own or whatever. I could care less. But I felt like I should probably reveal this. And then all of a sudden came the invitation. why don't you free yourself?
Mm.
Why don't you actually liberate yourself? You don't have to wait for somebody to unlock the cage. Why don't you do it for yourself? Do it right now. What does it look like?
Yeah.
Don't be an ass, and don't do it passive aggressively. If you really take stock, he probably has more, but here's the thing. If he likes that, then give him what he wants.
Yes.
I just said, you know what? I think absolutely. I said, I think he's got the most, and it's just an amazing thing. And so I think one of the things to contemplate, and I brought out the concept of, man, think about your life. You want power, but if you want real power, you're gonna do an inner conversation and begin to make shifts in your life that address the things that you feel threatened by. Because what you feel threatened by, you get bullied by. You have no peace. You can't influence anyone in that state. A love that pierces, again, I'll say it, is kind, it's patient, it's not weak. The world says you seek power. You seek a powerless power. The world goes, how is it that you, and I hate to use the word control, but if you ever want great influence is fierce love, firm and soft love together, firm and soft energy together. Man, think about it like this, and it's like a silly analogy. Erections. If you had an erection 24 hours a day, you'd probably go to the doctor, you'd have a problem. You need some relaxation, you need some soft time.
Yeah. No kidding.
Right.
Man, that's so powerful, James. Just tons of great stuff there. And I like that you keep coming back to this idea and this concept that as men, we need to surrender more and give up control. And I think that's so important, because that is how we're built for the most part. It's that we feel that we need to be in control of everything. And when we stop trying to control everything just opens up. And I love the analogy of closing our eyes and thinking about, what do we see? Because when we are trying to be in control, we're so laser focused that we miss so much of what's going on. And when we take that opportunity to step back, and just the analogies that you're putting together and the metaphors are perfect for this. So I'm getting a sense that you're really, what you're talking about, you're starting to build this proper foundation that helps support our lives. And so tell me a little bit more about, how do we go about doing that will help support our life no matter what comes our way?
I love the way you phrase that question. Of course, you spilt the beans, you're 50, but I mean, any wise man at 50 would start saying, support these men that are a little younger. And we found, if you don't have the foundation, you don't really have much, right? Yeah. My work, all of what I do, it sounds like you and I, similar paths, right? We help men with similar things. And that is, we're all about working with the areas of life that influence the entirety of the life, which is the foundation. What it stands on, the infrastructure that's there, actually does matter. And I find that when you find, or someone finds you, and you talk with them, and you discover that they're about satiated with fighting the resistance part. Now they're open. And I feel like the openness often happens when they're brought into something that they've heard probably a million times, probably from their wife or their friends or business colleagues or books or seminars. And that is, there's something that's within what you're doing, and it comes at the root of who you are.
Yeah.
And for some reason, and it makes sense. I'm reflecting back.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody says it's at the root of who you are, it's like there's shame that comes in quite often. It's like a piece of the foundation of me is a problem. So it makes sense why we deflect that for a long time. The only thing is, all of a sudden, when the marriage is literally on the rocks, things are both falling apart, you begin to want to listen to the things that earlier were not very comfortable. You're like, actually, I feel shame, but how can I go beyond shame? Because this is not letting me go.
Yeah.
And right. And so all of a sudden, we begin to open up to viewing foundational adjustments as something that we might want to deal with in relation to with different energies than the harsh, judgmental, untowards, shameful, look, I'm an idiot, I should have it all figured out. What the F?
Mm-hmm.
I'm 40 years old, I still don't have it figured out. Listen, who am I? this is, you know what I mean? Eh? All of a sudden, it's like we want to open up. We want. So the foundation, let me say it like this. I had a client the other day, and we were talking about certain things. And finally, I said to him, so where are we going? And he goes, what do you mean, where are we going? I said, it seems like we're trying to arrive at a certain place. Where are we trying to arrive at? And he lays it out and he says, well, I feel there sometimes, but sometimes I don't. And it's like, I do feel and I don't feel. And this person's very wealthy, but wealth has little to do with happiness, in my opinion. It makes it easier maybe, but anyway. And I challenged him. I said, okay, I'll just call him Tom. It's not his real name. I said, Tom, when you consider, when did you arrive? When you were born, didn't you arrive when you were born? And who were you when you were born? I said, have you realized when I talk with you, I'm waking you up to what you already know. All I'm doing is I'm waking you up to you coming back home to the place you know. You've just taken on all these layers and you're slowly getting rid of the filters and you're coming back to the ground of being, which is like, I build on both answer and question. So you have done the journey of the need all the answers. Now you're coming into question. Yeah. So the foundation actually begins with a decision. When do you arrive? Is it some place when you get the $10 million or this client, well in excess of 250 million a year in bonus pay? I mean, you can guess his actual lifestyle. But beside that, so foundation, which men, put it to you like this, men, which you men, if you knew where you could specifically work to get the most effective results, wouldn't go there now? And if you don't, or if you say, no, that's not me yet, you're probably just not tired enough of being in the I got it figured out stage. But once you're tired of that, you're exhausted for something different, you will come to that place likely. And once you are, if somebody were to offer you, listen, you're not a F up. You're not broken. You just need to remember a few key things. And actually, they control your life right now. Don't you feel a little controlled? And he says, yeah, I feel like whatever I do, that even if I try with my best intentions, it still comes back. My wife says this and this about me. And I'm like, oh, why is this? For my business, why is this? And we go, listen, there's just a few small metrics and optics. If we would just turn the dial a little bit, listen, you're well along your way. It seems to me most men become quite interested because honestly, I just look at you in the picture here, dude, you're a bro. I like this. And I like all people, but I'll tell you one thing, you know what bros do? Bros are like, you tell me where the switch is right now. I don't want to waste my time no more. I want to know exactly where I can go because I don't got a minute to waste because I got demands on me everywhere. And if you tell me where I can be present and what I can be present to, I'm sick and tired of running from that. I'm sick and tired of thinking that I had shame and I'm going to back away from that. Listen, if you can help me figure out what that is, I'm willing to play.
Absolutely. 100%. And that, in my work, I talk about having purposeful intention, and making that a little bit bigger and making it and having purpose and meaning in our life. And I think the challenge with a lot of us men is that we don't do that work, or we struggle with doing that work, and we do stay in our mind. And I just love how you put into tired of just trying to figure it all out. And the lone wolf syndrome is the way I look at it. That when we get tired of being the lone wolf and we realize that really what we need to do is do this inner work and surround ourselves with men who are where we want to go, who can help us guide us where we're going, then we have to ultimately end up by accomplishing more things in life. I wanted to know that obviously you've done lots of work. You've gone through your seasons. Were there any one or two books that really changed and shaped how you got you started on your journey?
Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
That was a humdinger.
Yep.
When you consider that Auschwitz There was some individual lost his family. How is it you can find joy in the midst of a storm? And guess what? He didn't find it through changing the facts. It sucked, but he found joy authentically. That's what we do in the weekly wins and losses community calls every Friday, no charge, noon time, people coming from around the world. We don't convert a loss to a positive, but we realize that guess what? Our shoulders can handle it. And isn't that the good news? Because if we don't reconcile that, what ends up happening, we just try pushing that stuff into the corner and under the dustbin somewhere. And then one day what happens is we feel like we're failures because we've pushed a lot of mini losses beneath the table. Instead of that, why not just check in with yourself and be like, what was this designed for? What was this sent for? Was it sent so that I could fall apart? And to that point, let me say this. When I was going through my journey, I remember I made a deal with God. I said, God, listen, I'd like my joy back, but you know what I want most? I've never had peace, but I was daring enough to ask for peace. And you know what I got? Pieces. I fell into a million pieces. So here's the thing. If we in life, and I want to speak to those men right now who feel like they're in pieces. I know that spot. It's rough. Sometimes a person says and realizes there's no way I can put this thing back together again. These pieces are beyond distinguishable. I've been broken before, but this time I've broken more pieces. What do I do now? Firstly, I'd suggest keep going. Please keep going. And please don't turn the good news of being in pieces into bad news. Because when you're in pieces, you are perhaps closer to the life force that you actually always are, which is humble leadership. Masculine energy primarily runs amok in leadership when it dominates and controls all the time. Nothing wrong with dominating and controlling. When there's a fire, get out. Here's how I'm going to get there. Kids, follow order. No problem.
Yeah.
Masculinity is toggling, turning on, knowing what's needed. I have 3 gates that I go through and I stress test in my life. 3 gates to check in. Number 1, I ask myself the question, what's the universal truth here? Not the perspective truth. Everybody has perspective truth, but universal. And universal truth, basically what it is if you have a disagreement with someone, you just rise higher and higher and you find something in common, something that we as society can all agree with. So there's tons of perspective. So what's the universal truth here? What's the truth here? What's really going on? Ask yourself that question. And then the second thing, be about asking yourself, how am I being here? Firm or soft? Firm or soft? And if you're choosing either one, that's what's getting you in trouble. But if you have a fierce love, you're just right in that space where you don't have to use willpower, because willpower will exhaust. We know. In a boardroom, you just wait until the one that shows up with willpower is the first one that loses. You just continue the clock and he'll eventually peter out.
Yeah.
So it happens. And you guys, and you men all know this. You men know it. There's some men that just, it doesn't matter. They just keep going and going and going and going. Who doesn't, guys, honestly, who doesn't want to have energy? Unbounded energy. I lost my way and you're going to help me back. What did you ask? Well, what was your question? I lost my way.
The question here was about talking about what were your the books, and you had started with Viktor Frankl was this big one, Man's Search for Meaning, and then you were going through your 3 pieces, your 3 stage gates that you go through. So we're just getting ready, I think, for the 3rd one.
Yeah. So the 3rd gate is it necessary and is it needed? So before you speak up, I have a little rule. It's like, before I talk, type, or text.
Yeah.
Is it needed and is it necessary? So the first you ask yourself, of course, the question, gate number 1, hey, listen, what's the universal truth here? Number 2, how am I showing up? Is it both, is it firm or soft? Either or, is it both and? If it's both and, you're good. And then say, is this actually still needed? Because here's the thing, guys. We know that the person that speaks last often has influence. You know why that ends up working when you work with feminine energy in your house, for example? If you're married to somebody of a different sex, just be sensitive towards this. If that is your case, the woman often just likes to spew. She likes to go off in colorful tales and this and that and all kinds of stuff. If the man tries to compete with her feminine energy, she'll be like, bitch, move over. Like, who are you? You're playing girl. Don't play girl. Don't play girl. So when I think about Viktor Frankl, back to that, of course I read several books, but back to that book.
Yeah.
It's like, we think we can't handle much. We can handle so much more than what we ever thought was possible. And sometimes, and I challenge listeners, pick up the book, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. Tap into some of the nuance. And you will realize that the areas of life where you're hitting like, this is too much, you have just begun.
Yeah.
Right. So what was your experience? You seemed to nod when I mentioned Viktor. What was your experience with that book?
Well, I'm very similar. It was so astounding to me to read about somebody in a position like that and being able to come out and understand truly what was important to him and how to change himself to get himself into a better place. And then I reflect back on the time when I picked up the book. I had gone through a personal divorce and had lost everything. And so I was in the lowest part of my life. And I sat there and thought, I'm not in a concentration camp. I don't have any moment here that I'm going to get hauled out and could be killed. I feel like life's over, but it's not. And I think, I think about that book, and that's why I like to ask the question about the book, is that we have these moments where we'll have a little piece of a story that'll really change our perspective. And that's really what we talked about today, isn't it? It's really about our perspective on things. And so of everything that we have talked about, and maybe things that we haven't quite mentioned just yet, what would be the one takeaway you'd recommend our listeners to take with them?
Oh boy, it's a great question. When I think about my life and I think about some areas where I've suffered because maybe I just didn't see yet. Maybe time hadn't come around for me yet. Maybe I was I don't know. Maybe it's just, maybe the timing, like I said, wasn't right. Something that has grounded me deeply. So these are like my values, the foundational parts of my life. Is number one, life owes me nothing. Nothing. So, and I challenge again, I'm throwing out a lot of challenges here, but I challenge your listeners to create some personal values that when you're at the lowest point of your life, if they ever show up, that these things will nicely jolt you into the awareness of who you are. Does life owe you or what? And if it doesn't, then a statement like, for me anyway, ended up being, so my personal values are number one, life owes me nothing. Number two, nothing has to be perfect. Number three, everything is a co-creation. I'm never doing it alone, ever. There's always a force of nature at play. Even if I seclude myself, something is going down. And number four, nothing traps me and everything frees me. And I don't say that through hyperbole, but if Viktor Frankl can do it, my friend, honestly, I don't need to be in control, nor do I want to be.
Yeah.
I simply need to allow it and to participate with it.
Absolutely. That is just so awesome. I just want to say thanks so much, James, for spending time with me today. And as you've shown us, that there's lots of gold in our wins and our losses. As long as we're willing to remain conscious, being in the moment, then we can find where that gold is and turn our perceptions into some powerful action steps, just as you've been telling us about your life. And by doing that, then we can become fully engaged in our lives. Now, listen, you mentioned a couple of times on clients, but how would our guests get a hold of you and get involved in any one of your programs or the work that you're doing?
Thanks for asking. They can simply go to my website at www.jamesheppner.com. And so my last name is spelled Heppner.com. And on that site, you will find things like my podcast. You will find my blog. You will find how to connect with me if we want to do a little discovery call and see if perhaps we are a good fit. And that's ultimately what I look for. I just look for a good fit and to see if you feel the same. Now, let me say it this way. I have a little gift for all of the listeners here today. And it's something that, this is a no charge. This is a no strings attached. This is an experience gift. And if you like, just go to the website, www.weeklywinsandlosses. Spell it out. So weekly, then you spell A-N-D, weekly wins. I'm botching this. weeklywinsandlosses.com. So the and is spelled with the AND.com. And that'll take you directly to the page on my website where you scroll down. There's an area that says join the next no charge community weekly wins and losses call. And my friends, if you come, take it in, experience. And if you want to be brave enough, most people, when they come, they just like, oh, heck yeah, I have a win and I have a loss. It's as simple as that. We do not convert losses to positivity, nor do we take the wins and make them any less than what they are. But we close the week off strong so that you have the energy for the next week to start anew and be like, yes, I want to take courageous action. Because if you don't reconcile these things, you end up next week going, I don't really want to take, and how many men don't want to take bold action? How many exactly? And then show up when it's required most. We want to show up and have the ability and activate the ability to show up when we're most needed.
Yes.
That's who we want to be. And you know what? Honestly speaking, come and experience. I am not everything. You are not everything, but together we can create an amazing experience. And people around the world, you should see their faces when they realize and they experience. And it's like a community that doesn't look at loss as negative. And guess what? You don't have to go through the dark night of the soul, but you can slowly let the things that you think you're trying to hold together, just let them fall a little bit. Let there be pieces. So instead of may you go in peace, may you go in pieces. It's the most beautiful thing, but the pieces that you can take action with, the light shining through the next week, and you have courage and away you go. So thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure. You were just a wonderful host.
Well, thank you so much again for being on the show. I'll make sure I put all this information in the show notes so people can get it out there and reach James. I highly encourage you to get onto that weekly podcast. And just once again, thank you so much for being here today.
Lovely. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.